The Bengals' 2020 season was a dumpster fire of a season. After losing their first pick in the draft, Joe Burrow, for the season, there was no optimism in the Cincy jungle, especially with the second round against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 15. But little did we know that this game would be one of the most surprising upsets in that NFL season, led by none other than Ryan Finley, a career who has taken a short stop in his life. Today, I'll recount what Finley has done so far. Ryan Finley was born on December 26, 1994 in Phoenix, Arizona, where he was raised and eventually attending Paradise Valley High and played varsity basketball and favorably varsity football. Playing quarterback and defensive back, Finley would be successful throwing over 3,000 yards with 35 touchdowns in his senior year and being an all-Arizona selection. Coming out of high school, Finley would be a 3-star recruit and was ranked in the top 10 quarterbacks from Arizona. On February 6, 2013, Finley would sign his letter of intent and commit to Boise State. Boise State is coming off a strong season with the aftermath of Kellen Moore going 11-2 as West Coast champions, but any contribution from Finley would be next season, as he would redshirt his freshman season. Head coach Chris Peterson would resign and take the head coach job to Washington and re-sign former offensive coordinator and quarterback coach Brian Harsin. Finley would play 4 games, most notably against Air Force. He would throw 161 yards with 2 touchdowns to 1 interception. He also ran for 31 yards. The next season, in 2015, with spring practice, Finley was looking to be the starter for the Broncos. But on April 25th, 2015, Ryan Finley would be arrested on charges of a minor in possession of an alcoholic beverage and resisting and obstructing officers. He would go under probation and community service. Even with this on Finley, he would be the starter heading in for the season. Finley would play the first 3 games before suffering a season-ending ankle injury. Finley would throw 485 yards with 1 touchdown to 4 picks. With the injury, the Broncos would have success with the emergence of Brett Ripon. Finley, reading the signs, knew that the starting job wasn't looking attainable. So on May 16, 2016, Finley would transfer to NC State. After an injury-riddled season with Boise State, the NCAA would grant Finley a 6th year of eligibility, meaning after the transfer, he has still 3 years left in college. The Wolfpack, coming off a 7-6 season, had just lost their senior starter, Jacoby Brissett, but with the familiarity with offensive coordinator Elia Drinkwitz, who also came from Boise State last season, Finley would start his first college game against William & Mary. The Wolfpack would crush WNM, with Finley throwing 174 yards and 2 touchdowns and having the best completion percentage for a debut starter in NC State. The final result was 48-14. For the rest of the season, Finley would throw for 3,059 yards, the highest mark for a sophomore in the Wolfpack. NC State would go 7-6 and participate in the Independence Bowl against Vanderbilt. They'd win 41-17. Leaving some potential the season prior, Finley and the Wolfpack were looking good and played good. They went 9-4 just behind Clemson and ranked number 23 by AP and the coaches. Finley himself would improve significantly, earning multiple Manning Award Starter of the Week and putting up 3,712 yards of total offense, second school best by a junior. He was also a finalist for the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award, the only ACC quarterback to make that list, but lost to Oklahoma State's Mason Rudolph. NC State would end the season in the Sun Bowl against Arizona. They'd win 52-31. Finley's senior season would lose pieces to the offense with Nyheim Hines, Will Richardson, and Jalen Samuels, but still have success being 9-4 once again behind Clemson and Syracuse. Finley would have his best for last, being first team All-ACC, having over 3,949 total offensive yards, 25 touchdowns to 11 picks. He would also be a finalist for the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm for a consecutive season, but won by Gardner Minshew, and a semi-finalist for the Davey O'Brien Award, won by Kyler Murray. One of his best games would be against Syracuse, throwing 473 yards and 3 touchdowns. Finley would finish his college career in the Gator Bowl against Texas A&M. He'd lose 13-52. Finley would finish NC State in the second in career passing yards, behind Phillip Rivers. Finley would attend the NFL Combine and his college pro day in hopes of getting the call in 2019. Teams saw Finley as a game manager with the likes of Alex Smith, but not as strong of an arm. He would have pre-draft visits with the Redskins, Lions, and the Bengals. Mock drafts would have Finley as borderline late day 2 to early day 3. During the 2019 draft in the 4th round, the Bengals would make a move for Finley. They would trade with the 49ers their 4th round and 2 6th-round picks for their 4th round pick, which was the 2nd pick in the 4th round. The Bengals would draft Finley with the 104th pick, while the Niners would use those picks to get Mitch Wisnowski, Justin Skule, and cornerback Tim Harris. After drafting Finley, the Bengals would state that Andy Dalton was still quarterback 1 for next season, and that Finley would be competing for backup against Jeff Driscoll in the growing for the future. During the preseason, Finley would be impressive than most people thought. Overall, it was clear that he would win out, and he would, with Driscoll going on IR with a hamstring injury. Ryan Finley was the backup for Cincinnati. He would remain there until after a loss to the Rams, that the Bengals would name Ryan Finley starter against a Week 10 opponent, Baltimore Ravens. With his first start, it wasn't good. He would barely make half his throws, was under 200 offensive yards, and threw 1 touchdown and an interception. The Ravens would win 49-13. Things wouldn't improve in the next game against the Raiders, just hardly throwing over 100 yards with no touchdown and a pick in the loss 17-10. His last game against the Steelers would be his best this season, getting exactly 200 offensive yards, 1 touchdown, and no picks. But he and the Bengals would still lose 16-10. The next day, Finley would be benched for Dalton and hold an 0-3 record. From there, the Bengals would go 2-14 and earn the first pick in the 2020 draft. For the 2020 season, there would be a change of quarterback 1 from Andy Dalton to Joe Burrow, with Burrow drafted to Cincy, seemingly ended any chance Finley had to be a franchise quarterback for the Bengals. Finley would compete once again with Jake Dolgala for the backup quarterback spot. Even with a late signing of Brandon Allen, Finley would be quarterback 2 behind Burrow. Things were schematic for the Bengals until week 11 against the Washington football team. In the second half, Burrow was hit low, tearing his ACL and MCL, along with damage to his PCL and meniscus. With Burrow out, Finley comes in the game 14-9 in Washington's favor. It wouldn't go well as Finley would put up 18 total offensive yards, a passer rating of 0, and led the team to a 20-9 loss. After Burrow was placed on IR, the Bengals activated Brandon Allen and immediately elected him as a starter, moving on with Finley as backup until week 15. Allen would suffer a knee injury, making Finley starter for the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers themselves are a strong opponent, starting the season 11-0, but has been on a 2-game losing streak. Predictions looked good for the Steelers, but little do they know the fall of the cards would take over.
2nd and 2. Finley will keep it right up the middle. Ryan
Finley would have his first win and his best game in his career, beating the Steelers 27-17. Allen would continue to be in the starter for the last 2 games, taking the Bengals to a 4-11-1 season. Finley would throw 164 yards and rush 66 for 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. He would also finish the season with a 22.8 passer rating. During the offseason, Brandon Allen would be extended, and the writing was on the wall for Finley. On March 19, 2021, just before releasing him, the Bengals sent Finley and their 2021 7th-round pick in exchange for the Texans' 2021 6th-round pick. Bengals would draft Chris Evans, who is still with Cincinnati, and the Texans would trade away their pick in the trade for Shaq Lawson from Miami. Finley trade was done 3 days after Deshaun Watson's first civil lawsuit was filed. 3 days after trading Finley, Houston would sign Tyrod Taylor, dropping Finley as the 3rd stringer. Then the Texans would draft Davis Mills in the 3rd round, and then sign former competitor Jeff Driscoll in May. 5 days after signing Driscoll, Finley was released, only spending 2 months with the Texans, just barely missing the beginning of OTAs. After the release, Finley would go back to Arizona and continue to keep himself in shape. Going deep into 2022, he would state that he hasn't made a career move yet. In 2023, Finley has been participating in the PPA, or Professional Pickleball Association Tour. Ryan Finley would not have a great career in the NFL. He would get the worst years of Zach Taylor and brutally just didn't play well for Cincinnati. But he does have the one win in his career that people will remember for time's end. Not to mention, he was able to accomplish things in NC State. Finley's football career may be over, but you can't say it wasn't fulfilling, and I don't think Finley regrets a moment of it.
Take this move on home.